Hello, everyone. Welcome to our big season review podcast. Great to have you with us. And, 22 races down. Let's see what we all made of it. Joining me for this one is Karun, Chandhok, Ted Kravitz and Bernie Collins. Hello to all three of you. We've had a slightly weird technical silliness to start off with. Bernie is only sat a matter of meters away from me, but we're going to communicate in different rooms, such is the way remote recordings work. Karun, start with you. How are you? What's going on?
I'm good. I still haven't had my hair cut after Simon made fun of me in Vegas, so I will try and get that done this week. It's been a busy year, hasn't it? I think we're all ready for a little break and then count down to Bahrain testing.
Indeed. Less than 100 days away. Ted, you have dressed up for the podcast. In case people are listening, you are wearing a fantastic shirt.
I have, Matthew. We'll get onto that in a minute. I must say, from somebody from a theatrical background, you've broken the fourth wall here. I am in my book-line study, as is Karun. Bernie is in her strategy mission control, and you are in your riverside loft apartment, obviously. So honestly, you've just done away with all the magic, haven't you?
I know.
We are in where people expect us to be. Bernie's got terabytes of data just behind her in this futuristic
flying like lasers behind her, Ted.
Exactly. Linked up to the to every Formula One server, and the shirt is in reference to my, as we're going to get onto, underrated driver of the year. This is the shirt that I bought in the night market in Bangkok when we went to hang out for a couple of days with Alex Albon. Sorry to do a plot spoiler or a spoiler for my answer there, but this is the very shirt that I wore in that shoot with Alex Albon.
Brilliant. You look great. And you've enjoyed teasing me, actually, Ted, throughout the season about my loft, my slightly strange loft that I'm in.
Yes. With you open those metal windows behind you.
Who knows?
And you can see Tower Bridge. So it's a lovely
it's a very expensive apartment. Yeah. Bernie, we haven't spoken to you for a while. How have you been? I know we were just chatting. You were out in Vegas. How have you enjoyed the final few races of the season?
Yeah, I think it's been good. I think it's been a much more positive end of the season than we all feared maybe at the start of the season. Yes, some of the championship was tied up really early on, but there was so much still going on in those last few races.
Let's crack on then, and we're going to try and get a few questions in from you guys at home. We're going to also go through a few categories as well throughout the season, like Ted alluded to. The first one, and kind of the only place to start, is Max Verstappen and some of the records he's broken. But I want to draw everyone's attention to something that happened this weekend. So he obviously passed 1,000 laps led for a Formula One season. Now, the record that he's also beaten as well is that of McLaren in 1988. He has equalled the amount of laps led by Alain Prost and Ayrton Senna in their McLaren, 1,003, which is just a bizarre stat and amazing that he's got the exact same number. But Bernie, I'll come to you on this first. We knew from the press conference afterwards, Max was saying that he deliberately stayed out. He deliberately didn't choose the quickest strategy in order to get more laps in the lead in order to have this record to go over 1,000. As a strategist, I mean, have you ever been in a position where you're not choosing the quickest time, but you're trying to break records? It was just ridiculous, wasn't it?
I think I was never fortunate enough to be in that very favourable position as a strategist to be fit to throw the dice with the points. I missed that quote actually after the race. It's surprising that, well, I guess they have margin to go for that, so I can see why it's important to have another record on the board. But, for people that often might say we're not that concerned about records, we don't care how many we win in a year, but then to say, we're actually running a suboptimal strategy to do it, I looked at it and assumed that their strategy was more, they had the margin to cover off others, so go for it that way. But it just goes to show how driven he still is at the end of a really strong season to be thinking of what else can he do, what is the next target out there.
Karun, you're a man who knows his Formula One history. When you look at the records that Max has broken this year, just how impressive is what he's achieved from a record statistical point of view?
Well, the statistics man is really crafty, but I think listen, it's horrendously impressive, right? Anytime you look at a season where a driver scored twice as many points as the person in second place, that just underlines what a great year they've had. I think there's a lot of people out there who say They won because they cheated on the cost cap the year before. They won because Max won because he's in, the most dominant car, and he's only winning because he's in the most dominant car. Yes, it is the most dominant car of this season, but it's not like Checo blitzed the rest of the opposition by a long, long way. And he is a very, very high quality driver. So I think, and even the cost cap thing, Lewis himself said they've stopped updating the car since August. And I don't know, what do they breached at? 1.2 million or something. I think you'd have spent a lot more than that from August if you were in a championship fight. So I think the reality is you have to give credit where it's due. And what we've seen this year is one of the greatest seasons put together by a driver perfectly in tune with their car.
Ted, what will you remember most from Max Verstappen's season? What when you look back over a glass of red wine or something over Christmas with your turkey, what will you be thinking? What will you be thinking about Max's season?
Gosh, red wine, the tannins in that, and then the tryptophan. Is it not tryptophan that's the naturally occurring sleep-inducing enzyme that's in turkey? That makes you fall asleep after Christmas dinner, after Christmas lunch. I'd be asleep, Matthew. I wouldn't think about it, but what I would think about in retrospect this year is just the relentless nature of pursuit of perfection, and that was it. And they never gave up. He never wanted to give up being perfect. And there were some races that showed that you have to be perfect. Max had to be perfect because there was enough of competition left for them to be caught if they had slipped up in any way. And Max himself hadn't got to grips with the car in Azerbaijan and in Saudi Arabia, where Checo won. But after that, it was as if those disappointments and those annoyances. And do you remember how annoyed he was after Saudi? Do you remember the Checo celebrating and the Jos not wanting to say well done to Checo moment immediately, even though I think he later went on to do so. So he was really annoyed. Max was really annoyed. And that's what made him carry on so relentlessly for perfection. But I think I have the moment, Matt, that you're talking about, that they went for this 1,000th lap and made sure they do it. So we didn't know this at the time, but what we have is a very clever AI system. Maybe it's not artificial intelligence, maybe it's just intelligence that actually transcribes all the team radios for us. And I heard it on the team radio feed in the middle of the race. In fact, it was at, glasses on, it was at 2:26 and 19 seconds in the middle of the race. And there was a message from GP Lambiase to Max Verstappen, which was just 4 words: "Okay, mission A complete." And that was it. And it was like no context. It came up on my feed, and I thought, what was mission A? Where? And then it turns out that was what they were thinking. They hadn't told us that they were going to do that, and that was their mission A for the race, to better 1,000 laps or 1,003 laps in the lead, and they really accomplished that.
Yeah, I just think it goes to show what an amazing season it's been for them, and the fact that they're even thinking about that, having the space, the headspace to think about that midway through the last race of the season. Right, let's get on to some categories. I've given you all some homework to do. Hopefully you're going to all score good marks, and you've all done it. We'll find out.
All score well, Matthew. Get your grammar here. You're going to all score well.
Ted, really, honestly.
Go to school good.
Sorry,
unbelievable. These millennials, I tell you.
Right, driver of the year that's not Max Verstappen. I think, I don't want to speak for everyone here, but I think I personally would say that Max Verstappen has been comfortably, in a way, the most superior driver of the year. So let's remove him from the equation. And who has impressed us? Bernie, I'll start with you. Who's impressed you?
Well, I was going to say exactly what I think Ted was going to say at one point, and that I think when you look at the driver standings, I think the driver who's I class the driver of the year as the driver who's outdriven the car, the driver who's performed better in the car than I think other people could have done in that car and got better results than potentially the car deserves. And the one driver, there's maybe 2 drivers that stand out. The 2 that stand out.
Don't take both. You get one.
Oh, okay.
Leave some for us.
I'm going to stick to one, which matches Ted. So I was going to say Albon. When you look at where Williams finished in the Constructors' Championship, and you look at, they finished P7 in the Constructors' Championship, that's massive for them. Albon scored, I think, all but one of those points. So he has outdriven that car. He has brought that team forward in a way that when you look at the drivers and constructors stands out. And that's why I thought that he'd driven really well throughout a lot of races this year and qualifying.
Let's come back to, because I know that, Ted, you might have put him for another category. So let's come back to that
Bernie,
category.
that's not mine. But I love, Bernie, that you're overseeing the two that Karun and I thought you were going to mention, who was obviously Lewis Hamilton and Fernando Alonso.
Well, I'm going for Fernando. So.
No, I'm going to steal Fernando off you.
No, I got there first.
No. You got there first. All right. Okay. I actually think it's Fernando, but I'm going to say Lewis Hamilton. In a car where, do you remember at the start of the season, there was this thing where Lewis was telling us all that he sits too far ahead in the car and he feels disconnected from the car. Well, he stopped telling us that he sits too far forward in the car, even though because Mercedes was saying, well, he sat no further forward than he did last year, and Lewis would say, well, yeah, but last year didn't go exactly very well either, and I just didn't talk about it. But I just think when you look that he was not connected to the car, and particularly that was evidenced in Abu Dhabi last weekend, for him to still be P3 in the P3 in the drivers, got constructors on the brain, is the driver of the year who's not Max Verstappen, for me. But I would kind of like to say Fernando Alonso. But Karun, I'll go, you can have Fernando.
Go on, Karun. Take the floor. Fernando Alonso, driver of the year that's not Max Verstappen.
I just think he maximised every opportunity in a very Fernando Alonso-esque way. You know, there were races where at the start of the year where the Aston was clearly very competitive and he was racking up those podiums and we all thought this is going to be brilliant. They're going to be the second best team. And then from Barcelona onwards, you know, we had some changes to the front wings and things like that came about. And they never quite managed that same form as they showed in the early part of the season. Other people developed. It's all relative. You know, it's hard to say if they went backwards. But, you know, the reality is, if you look at the early part of the year, I was doing some numbers yesterday, until Spain, they were 0.51% of the Red Bull, the pace-setting Red Bull. From Spain onwards, it becomes nearly 0.9%, that gap to Red Bull, you know, so that seems to be the tipping point. But I look at races like Holland, where we had that rain. We look at Brazil, bit of weather, you know, strange weather in qualifying. Alonso's there. He hangs on in the race, incredibly opportunistic when it came to racing against Checo there towards the end. Abu Dhabi, you know, the sort of pretty dangerous, as they said, brake test on Lewis Hamilton to race into the DRS line and stay in front. But there was never a weekend where, apart from Mexico, where it looks like he was carrying some damage, but there was never a weekend where he was outpaced by his teammate. And I think he really, really maximized any performance that was there in the car.
While we're on things that were said in the press conference, I don't know if anyone else picked up on this question that Mike Crack got asked in the press conference about Fernando Alonso when he was said, you know, is there a desire to extend his contract past 2024? And Mike Crack replied, well, obviously, yes. Which seemed to Andrew Benson from the BBC asked that question and he was digging for more lines. Mike Crack didn't really give them to him. But I think it just goes to show the quality that Fernando possesses. But I don't know, was anyone a bit surprised that Mike Crack reacted like that?
Not really. And knowing Andrew Benson, as both Karun and I do, having been his colleagues at various TV stations throughout the time, I think maybe what Benson, a self-avowed Fernando Alonso aficionado, was after was tempting Mike to fall into the Alpine trap of not committing to Fernando Alonso long term. And Mike was too clever for that because we've learned from Alpine, haven't we, with, I forgot his name, he's been gone so long, Laurent Rossi, that's it. And by extension, I guess Otmar, although I think it was Laurent Rossi's fault. You know, you better commit to Fernando Alonso long term and leave it up to Fernando to decide when he's had enough. Otherwise, you will invoke his ire. So I think that's probably, I don't know, am I reading that differently, Karun? What do you think?
No, I think you're absolutely right. You know, Fernando is just a master politician, isn't he? He doesn't always get those career moves right, as we've seen in the past, but he absolutely got this one right. And he's the best asset they've got. You know, they've got lots of shining buildings and other bits and pieces, but ultimately he's the guy who's delivering it in the car. So yeah, I think, but I think you're right. You know, Benson, I remember, Ted, when Fernando did his first retirement, I got Fernando to sign a picture to Vincent saying "Love you lots," which we framed and gave it to him as a Christmas present. So there you go.
Very good, very good. Let's move on to another category. Underrated driver of the year. And Bernie, I'm going to come to you again because I'm sort of intrigued by Alex Albon being your what was our first category? It was
driver of the year
that's not Max Verstappen. So
yeah.
underrated, because presumably underrated would be outperforming the car as well. So I wonder, who are you going to go for this one?
Yeah, well, so my underrated is more that I think potentially in the press or externally not viewed as having good results as potentially the year seen for whatever reason. So again, there's a few, and I can totally see why Albon falls into it, but probably the person that stands out the most to me as someone I think, at least going forward, let's see, but Liam Lawson, to get in that car and to perform as he did, I think you cannot overestimate the pressure that is on you, knowing that you have 3 seats to really lay a mark, and to score points in it, in those initial races, and to seem so calm and cool as he did. This is your one shot at making this, or potentially a one shot at making this work. So I actually put him down.
I actually put him down as well, and I'm not surprised.
So did I.
Did you? Very
But hang
good.
on, this isn't working because he's not underrated. We all rated him very highly.
I think externally he's underrated. Not by us, but externally.
Right.
That was my viewpoint, but maybe I'm wrong.
I had him and Albon, so now I've got to quickly think of a third. So
All right. Well, I'll
these
give
two have nicked it.
you 2/3. I'll give you Yuki Tsunoda, who I think we have overlooked because he's made the odd mistake. Look at Mexico, but he has done very well, and particularly in the last few races, and is developing into a very nice Grand Prix driver indeed. Probably Oscar Piastri doesn't count in this because he's not underrated. I think we all rate him very highly. And so I'd probably go. I might go Zhou Guanyu actually, because he had a couple of times in the points and decent runs in the points, which went completely unreported more or less. But yeah, no, I'm still going with Alex Albon for my underrated.
I might go Nico Hülkenberg because I think
nice.
he's done a much better job than people give him credit for this season. He's come back after a good chunk of time away from Formula One, and that's not easy to just get back and get on it. And he outqualified Kevin Magnussen 19-9 across the comparative qualifying sessions in both sprints and the races. So I think that's a really strong return to Formula One. Haas have got terrible issues with tyre wear, so let's not discuss the points or where they are in the standings. But I thought Nico Hülkenberg's return to F1 was one of the underrated stories of the year.
From being a TV pundit, so there's hope for you yet, Chandhok.
I'll be back in the gym this afternoon, Ted.
Yeah.
After my haircut.
You never know. You never know. I just one more thing on the Liam Lawson idea, because I do think that sparks an interesting debate about next year, and the fact that obviously Logan Sargent is, as we know, the only unsigned driver for next year. Who knows when that's going to happen across the winter? But there are so many rookies, aren't there, waiting for a seat in Formula One. We've got Vesti, Pourchaire, obviously the F2 champion, Drugovich, the previous F2 champion. They're ready and primed, aren't they, to go into these seats? And right now, Karun, I mean, this is just a bad time, isn't it, to be a young rookie driver without a seat in Formula One? There just aren't the seats available.
It's a really strange feeling when you're doing F2 or GP2, as I was doing it at the time, because as you're coming to that middle of the season, you're all hunting around. There's 5 or 6 of you all hunting around. And timing becomes so critical because you're heavily reliant on people from the F1 paddock leaving, basically. In my case, the timing was good because 3 new teams arrived on the grid, so more seats opened up. But timing is such an important thing. And if you were looking at Drugovich or Lawson, they're drivers who finished ahead of Sargent, for example, in F2, so they probably do feel like they deserve an opportunity on the grid. Drugovich did a really good job in FP1, all the usual caveats, tyres, fuel, blah, 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 we don't know, but he was there on the timesheets, second quickest behind George Russell, and did a good job in every other time we've seen him in an F1 car, and he's the F2 champion. So I'm a little bit surprised and a bit disappointed he hasn't had an opportunity already in F1, and maybe there's a conversation there. Lawson, we've talked about. I don't think Lawson will take the Williams opportunity because he genuinely is keeping an eye on that Red Bull thing, right? There's what happens. Do they start the season with Checo? If that doesn't work out, do they stick Daniel in the Red Bull? In which case, do they put Liam in the AlphaTauri, or what are they going to be called next year? I think so. From Liam's standpoint, he's going, hang on a second. I might take this gamble here and not upset the Red Bull family, because you can't sign with Williams even on loan from Red Bull and then leave mid-season. So I think he's gambling on something opening up perhaps in the early part of next year. And as Bernie said, I think he's done an outstanding job. He had few opportunities. I mean, Bernie and I, we went to speak to him, didn't we, on the grid in Zandvoort. He'd done 0 laps in the car in the dry. He was about to start his first ever Grand Prix. He'd not even had time to speak to his mum and dad on the phone, he told us, because they were in New Zealand, and he was absolutely flat out. But he was really cool and calm on the grid. And I thought his, performance in Singapore in particular, we know now that he got told why, basically on his way to the garage to get in the car for qualifying, that he was not going to be in Formula One next year. Helmut Marko dropped the bad news as he was about to get in the car for qualifying, and he got to the top 10. So yeah, there's a few people around, isn't there?
Yeah.
Well, anyway, Matthew, you need to wait. You can't put Paul Scher in Williams. You need to wait and put him in a race-winning car, because firstly, we need more people called Theodore in the sport, and secondly, we need to see what's gonna happen when he wins a Grand Prix. Because did you see his celebrations when he won the F2 championship?
The team radio.
No, only the team radio. But when he made sure he got his helmet off before he did the victory, and then did the victory like that. I mean, his celebrations were so flamboyant. I want to see him win a Grand Prix to see what he's going to do next. Sorry, go on, carry on.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, I think Formula One, in a way that football perhaps does have these crazy celebrations. Maybe we need a few more. A few Alan Shearer hands up in the air or something. Who knows? Right, let's move on. Race of the year, and this is a category just for basically. I kind of put in my notes to you overall whole weekend belter. So I don't know what everyone had for that. Bernie, I'm stuck with you for each category, but yeah, it's your honour.
I feel there's a lot of pressure there.
Yeah,
it's difficult, but I think one of the most exciting weekends was probably Singapore, just because we had a lot more competition. So it was a lot more interesting going into it. We were a lot of discussion. Was it going to be as poor as it was going to be? Not for the out-and-out racing, because Singapore is obviously not renowned for that. But in terms of the challenge, maybe Vegas was another one that was quite close on that. But the challenge, I thought the Singapore weekend was good.
Yeah, incredible weekend, and obviously the time when Red Bull's run came to an end. Ted, what did you go for?
I'm going for Melbourne, Australia. Remember that? Yes, because you talk about the other main act that's been this year, which has been Taylor Swift and the Eras Tour. Formula One had its own Eras Tour on the podium, because we had 3 different eras of Formula One giga champions on the podium for the first time. Max Verstappen, who we're now very much in the Verstappen era. We had Lewis Hamilton, we've had the Lewis Hamilton era before Max. And before Lewis's era, we had the Fernando Alonso era for 2005 and 2006. Not as long as he would have liked, but hey, that's the way it was. And before Fernando era, it was the Michael Schumacher era, of course, in F1. So that was the first time. I know we had it later on the season as well, but that was the first time the podium. You remember that? It was, I've written down here, Max, Lewis, Alonso, Stroll, then I think Perez, then Lando, and then Hülkenberg, and then Oscar Piastri. So do you remember all his restarts and red flags? Very entertaining.
Restarts, yeah.
That's right. Very entertaining.
It was an entertaining
I'm going with
race.
Melbourne.
Yeah, very good. Just as an aside, does anyone remember the Taylor Swift rumours that were circulating around the paddock?
Oh yeah, I mean Ted and I remember, was it Baku, Ted? Crofty, you and I, there's a whole load of references we managed to get in the commentary. It was quite good fun, wasn't it?
I think.
Yeah. Feels a long time ago.
I knew it was trouble when it came in, but
Oh, very good. Very good. Karun, what was your favourite race of the year?
I'm going to go for Zandvoort, because it was completely bonkers. We were all sitting there and you could see the rain cloud coming. Remember, Bernie, and you were getting very excited in your usual Bernie-esque way every time the weather radar lights up with all these blue clouds. And we could just see the rain coming closer and closer, and then it dumped. And it was brilliant. And it just created this really dynamic, exciting race. And there was a lot of different strategies. A lot of people got it completely wrong. And others, like Gasly and Alonso, came through. And obviously Max, serenely at the front, once again delivered for the home crowd. It was just a bonkers race, but very exciting to commentate on.
It really was a brilliant race in the Netherlands. Right, moving on. Qualifying moment of the year. So it could be one lap or one moment in quali. I'm going to switch it around now. Ted, I'm going to get you to kick off. Bernie, you're off the hook.
Right, what have I put? I have put, with an honourable mention for Nico Hülkenberg in Canada for P2, but that was in the rain, as I remember. So it was an honourable Hülkenberg. I'm going to say Oscar Piastri on his first visit to the samurai of all drivers tracks, Suzuka, P2 for Oscar Piastri. Sorry if I've stolen that one.
You stole mine.
Karun. Have we? Who? What? Piastri?
Yeah, Piastri Japan was my first
P2.
pick, but I'll go with my second pick, which was it's a boring pick, but it is Verstappen in Japan, because I just think it was as close to perfection as a lap you get. It was in the Schumacher, Senna, Hamilton category of utter qualifying brilliance. Nothing really left on the table. I enjoyed I think I watched the lap back probably 5-6 times, because it was just sublime. Every millimeter of the road used, and he thought about details as well. Coming through 130R, not using all of the road, using a shorter distance to try and just cut back some meters on the track, and the positioning of the car into spoon curve, just millimeter perfect, and on pole by, was it 0.7 of a second?
Yeah.
Just exceptional.
Yeah. Bernie?
Mine's a very different answer, because I think I'm coming at it from a very strategy point of view and not a very driver point of view. I agree with Ted's, though, that the wet session is good. I actually think the Vegas qualifying as a session was good, because it was one stint. You didn't know if people were going to do one stint or two stints on the soft tyres. The track was improving so much. It was really pushing drivers to lap one lap, try and improve and try and get it pinpoint right. And some people made big mistakes on the across the pit wall on the drivers. That's where we got some people going out very early, and some people got it right. And it was because it was such an unusual qualifying to what we normally have.
Very good. I can't believe no one's mentioned Monaco and Verstappen v Alonso, the final sector from Verstappen.
Oh, yeah.
And remember that? Where
it was a long time ago.
Alonso had the provisional pole, and then Verstappen was down through Sector 1 and Sector 2, and then right at the very end managed to steal it away from Alonso.
We did discuss this in Abu Dhabi at the weekend, and Anthony Davidson was very firmly of the opinion that was compromised by the fact that Alonso had messed up the last sector, and Max hadn't.
Interesting. Okay.
And so it wasn't the display of brilliance that Karun underlines from Verstappen in Suzuka.
That's a fair point. I'm coming at it more from a sort of spectacle, or like an amazing moment of qualifying where it's one driver, then another driver overtakes another, and I think that's when qualifying's at its best, right? When each driver's outdoing each other. Okay, very good. Final sort of category I've got is feel good moment of the year. What was the heartwarming, wholesome moment that got you that got you thinking? Karun, hand up.
I'm going to go Oscar Piastri winning the sprint in Qatar. It was just brilliant, because we've seen him building since sort of Silverstone onwards when the car got updated, and his second half of the year was really superb. He out-qualified Lando 8-7 in the second half of the year, including sprints. His race pace still, is a shade behind Lando, I think, especially with tyre management, no doubt about it. So that race in Qatar, it was this sort of it's a bit about like cycling. You've got this guy out front and this massive peloton coming to eat him up. And that's what it was. Max came through the pack. We had those safety cars and bits and pieces, but all of a sudden he thought, oh, God, here we go. He's going to win again. And those last 4 or 5 laps that Oscar drove, I thought was superb. He really managed his pace well, make sure he had a little bit of tyre in reserve to attack the last few laps and to take that win, as a rookie to win. And listen, I know it's not the Grand Prix, but it was a race, and he crossed the checkered flag first, and everyone cheered. So yeah, for me, that was the feel-good moment.
Yeah, lovely. Bernie, what was your feel-good moment?
Well, I was going to say I had 2, but Ted said we weren't allowed to do that. So
you are. I've got 5 for this one, Bernie. You are allowed to do it.
Oh, great!
Okay, but
you're allowed to do it.
I don't worry about stealing any of yours. I think as a competition, as the F1 thing, I think one of the feel-good moments was seeing McLaren turn around what was a terrible season up until that point and get both cars P2, P4 in Silverstone. Like, if there's ever a sign that, someone who's not doing well can improve and get right up there, that was it. I sort of thought that was really unexpected from the start of the year, although the start of the year was unexpected. And then from a personal point of view, I loved seeing Alonso, Aston Martin on the podium, race 1 Bahrain. We'd all gone through the test, not sure if that pace was genuine. And it was great to see, my old team really having pushed forward. To see all the trackside people that have worked so hard for so many years and not had the results to be like straight in with some really good results in race 1, for me personally, was that moment.
Bernie, I was pretty sure from testing that that pace was genuine because it was the final Alonso long run. I even said it, not to say I told you so, but I even said it in my last testing notebook that if you did the Grand Prix today, it would have been Max, Checo, and then Alonso. But you're right, we weren't sure where the others were. That's the point about where we knew Alonso was good. So I'm also going to go. I'm going to go. My first one is Alonso chasing down Max in Zandvoort at the end after the red flag and the restart, and everyone was like, "Come on, Fernando, can you do it? Can you do it?" But he didn't. I will. The second one, I'll go with Fernando last lap with Checo in Brazil. Can he stay ahead of him? Yeah, he can. Woo, feel good. I'll go Lando. Third is Lando himself in Silverstone. So this, of course, incorporates what you're saying about McLaren, both of you, and their performance in Silverstone. But Lando is so popular everywhere we go. In Holland, he gets just as big a cheer, well, almost as big a cheer as Max does. In Brazil, he's hugely popular. He's so popular everywhere, but to do it at Silverstone, to be P2 at Silverstone, his delight on the radio afterwards. So that's number 3. Number 4, Ricciardo in Mexico. That's everywhere that he's coming back from the broken hand. Yes, maybe Yuki, made a mistake and would have finished ahead of him, but that was feel good because he's still got the mojo is back. And that was feel good for me. 5, I'm going to say Gasly on the podium after the Alpine Night of Long Knives, Otmar Zafnauer, Alan Permain parting companies with. The turmoil, we'll call it the Alpine turmoil, and for Pierre Gasly to get a podium after that. And just to break my own rule, 6, I'm going to end with a driver that wasn't even driving this year, but had a good feel-good moment as to see a Formula One world champion in a man who's found peace with himself and what he wants to do this year, and that's Sebastian's B Hotel. That, for me, in Suzuka, to see a guy who is as excited as he was, winning races about insect hotels was a real feel-good moment for me.
I'm going to add in Sainz, Singapore. Because
I was going to say,
that last part of the race where the Mercedes bearing down on him with Lando in between, and the way he and Lando tag teamed and played the game, I loved watching Carlos win that race. It was just brilliant to watch because you know what, there have been other races, isn't there? Austin, for example. I know it's harder to overtake things in Singapore, but there have been other races where Max has not been on the front row, the first two rows, Miami and Saudi, a place like that. But you just kind of expected him to come through the pack somehow by some magic. But Singapore wasn't the case. They were genuinely off the pace, the Red Bulls. And to see Carlos and Ferrari take that win was lovely. And you know what? There was a bit of relief across the whole paddock as well that, thank God that someone else has won one.
I thought as well you might mention the Lando hug in Parc Ferme as well between Sainz and Lando. Obviously, Lando worked with Sainz to keep him within DRS range to negate the threat from behind. I thought that was quite a nice moment. My other moment, which is from this weekend, and I don't know how much of it you saw, was Franz Tost on the grid with all the drivers. The amount of hugs and love for Franz Tost was extraordinary, and just goes to show, I think, how highly he's held amongst people in Formula One. And I think, it's going to be sad to miss him. Did you? Sorry, I know I keep banging on about the press conferences, but I was looking at the press conferences this weekend. Did you see him give advice to a young driver who wants to get into Formula One, where he sort of says deadpan, you just do karting, you just do Formula 3, you just do Formula, very, very funny, very, very good. So I think we'll miss his personality.
He was Simon Lazenby's favourite team boss, wasn't he, Ted? I'm sure Simon will be crying when we get to
and mine in the sense on the team radio. Whenever he joined us as the pit boss on the team radio feed on the pit wall, he would say, "Hello, Crofty." He would always, "Good afternoon to you, Crofty." He would roll his R's for Crofty. And then when Crofty would say, "Okay, right, thank you very much, Franz," Franz would always sign off by saying, "Thanking you," which I like. I like anybody who uses the phrase "thanking you," but I like it. Good old Franz. I'm sure we'll see him around again in some way.
We hope so. So look, just before we go, I thought we'd just go final moment, final word on the season as a whole. What each of you will remember the season for, your overriding feeling. Karun, I'll start with you. What will that be for you?
Honestly, a bit of disappointment that Mercedes and Ferrari didn't turn up to the party to challenge Max and Red Bull. That as pre-season testing unfolded and we got to the first race weekend, I was just disappointed, honestly. And it was wonderful to see, obviously, the exceptional greatness of Max in a car that was one of the greatest cars ever built. But I was disappointed that the others didn't take the fight to him.
Bernie, what about you?
Again, I'm going to cheat and do two. The first one, I think it was, although the year became not surprising, the year was surprising at the start. We were shocked with how poorly McLaren and Mercedes performed, surprised, not from testing onwards at how Aston performed. So I think the order that we had at the start of the year was very different to what we expected at the end of the year before. So I think that was a surprise. And then for me personally, it was obviously my first year with you lot on Sky. So that's obviously a positive on a victory.
Hugely positive.
And you survived. You haven't run away yet.
One more podcast.
There's still time.
It's gone.
Yeah.
Hey, you're not getting away that easily, Collins. You're with us next year.
Yeah.
So, I mean, for me, Matt, I would say when I was growing up, and I wasn't, I'm old, but I'm not that old to have been around in 1988 when the MP44 won all the races apart from one. I always look back on that time and thought, I wonder what it would have been like to actually work on that season. I know while we had the fight between the two teammates, maybe that we didn't have the Red Bull, now I'm glad that I experienced what it was like when you've got a car that wins every one apart from one. It's been interesting to actually live through that. Almost as interesting as living through doing practice at 4 a.m, which I never thought I'd do.
That was horrendous.
That was interesting.
Awful.
But I'm glad I lived through it and actually did it. So so seeing perfection at work has been interesting and enjoyable in its own way, and seeing the chasing pack get closer, the likes of McLaren improving, the likes of Aston Martin improving, which does give me hope that while clearly Red Bull will make another step forward next year, everybody else will have closed up enough to give us the closer championship. I'm not going to say it's going to be hugely close and that anyone's going to beat Red Bull. They might not yet, but it is going to be much closer next year than it was this year.
Yeah. Well, look, fingers crossed. That's a lovely way to end it. And yeah, thank you very much, everyone, for listening to the podcast this year. We're going to try and be back for a few ad hoc ones over the winter and over the coming weeks before Christmas. Ted, I can't quite do as good a sign-off as you did from your notebook the other day. Thank you from the bottom of my heart and from the heart of my bottom.
Well, it was kind of I was sort of minded.
brilliant.
I was minded about Valtteri Bottas's Christmas calendar, his calendar for 2024, which is still on sale, I believe. Actually, it's selling out. It is in aid of the Movember charity, which is for I believe prostate cancer and men's mental health. So it's a good one, and you'll never see its like again. I can't think of any other driver.
Are you saying there's no Ted Kravitz version for 2025?
The nude calendar? No, certainly not. Together with Valtteri's tan lines and everything, it's quite the thing to behold, and worth your money as a Christmas present for charity.
Very good. So thank you very much, everyone, for listening this year. We really appreciate your company, and know that there's a lot of Formula One podcasts out there. I think we launched with 3 or 4 this year. We're really grateful for your company, and we will be back in the new year. Until then, bye for now.